Yeah. 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 Let the Bible speak. Don't speak for the Bible. Open the book and let's have a revival. It's about the truth. It's about survival. Return to the basics. Get back in the Bible.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to another awesome video where we're going to go live today. We're going to talk about the dating of the birth of Jesus Christ. This is actually going to start a series on dating the life of Jesus Christ. And I think this is important because there's a lot of information out there that isn't exactly accurate, mainly because we're continuing traditions from people from long ago before they had the information that we have today. Now, fortunately, we have archaeology and tons of books, internet resources to get us different places. I mean, the world is just overflowing with information, but they didn't have the same thing available back in the day. So there's some mysteries going on in the Bible about the birth of Jesus Christ, the death of Jesus Christ, the lifespan of Jesus Christ, the lifetime of Jesus Christ. And what I think is awesome is in order to reconcile these time frames, you have to let the Bible be your foundation as a narrative. But if they're pointing to people that are outside the Bible, you actually have to go outside the Bible and learn about that particular subject to fully understand what time frame is given to you in the Bible. Now, what's awesome about that is when you got outside resources of the Bible validating the testimony of the Bible, wow. It's amazing. To me, it's amazing. And then when I see the foreshadowing of Jesus' life in the Old Testament and in the New, it's just a major faith boost to me. But there are some things we got to work out, and there are some people out there that doesn't like the Bible that's trying to exploit things that appear like a contradiction in the Bible, and that's what also is going to come out of this series that I do, is answers to some of those contradictions. Now, I didn't realize when I promoted this 2-series event a week ago how much work was involved for me to get prepared. So I'll be front with you. This first series may be a little bit thrown together, not as smooth, but you should get something good out of it. But stay tuned for what's coming up next, because I actually have to extend this series to possibly a part 4. Rather than a part 1 and 2, because there's so many details, so many different angles we can look at, to validate the birth of Jesus Christ and to understand when this took place. Was it April? Was it October? Was it December? September? When was it? Well, today we're going to start our study by looking at the course of Abia and Luke's narrative about Zechariah and John the Baptist. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get that screen big so I can present you guys the slides that I put together to help you follow along in this narrative. So let's go ahead and do that right now. This is going to be awesome, and if you're like me and you're a sponge for knowledge, you're going to love this. I really do believe you will. So, dating the birth of Jesus Christ. When was Jesus born? The answer to this question seems to be lost in history forever. Yet, the answer is actually closer than we realize. In the Bible, there are many historical and contextual clues we can use to date Jesus' life. One of these clues is found in John the Baptist's father, Zechariah. This is where we begin our journey. There was in the days of Herod the king of Judea a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abia, and his wife of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. They were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless, and they had no child because Elizabeth was barren, and they both were well stricken in years. And it came to pass that while he executed the priest's office before God in the order of his course, according to the custom of the priest office, his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. Ooh. Okay. Notice Zechariah was a priest of the course of Abia, and that he was executing the priest office before God in the course of his order. The question is, what is the order of his course, and when would that take place? This answer is found in 1 Chronicles chapter 24. So let's have a peep at that. So I didn't read you the details because it's actually a long list of information, but I summarized it for you in a chart. Here, David divides the priesthood into 24 divisions. Abia is the 8th division right here in blue. Now the question is, when did Abia execute office? In Antiquities, Book 7, Chapter 14, Section 7, Josephus tells us this. He divided them also into courses, and when he had separated the priests from them, he found of the priests 24 courses, 16 of the house of Eleazar, and 8 of that of Ithamar. And he ordained that one course should minister to God 8 days, from Sabbath to Sabbath. So Josephus says Sabbath to Sabbath was the duration of each priestly division. But is there anything in the Bible that can validate this understanding? In 2 Chronicles chapter 23, verse 8, we could see a rotation of priests that came in on the Sabbath and those that went out on the Sabbath. The verse says, "So the Levites in all Judea did according to all the things that Jehoiada the priest had commanded, and took every man his men that were come in on the Sabbath with them that were to go out on the Sabbath. For Jehoiada was the priest dismissed, not the courses." With this, let's map out Abia, when Abia was most likely to execute office of the priest. So I put together a chart, another chart for you guys. Let's recap. Each division must serve Sabbath to Sabbath. So 24 divisions would take about 24 weeks, which means each priest would serve twice a year for 48 weeks. If we were to count 4 weeks a month for 12 months, we would assign the priest their approximate time in office, as I did. Off to the left here is the months, and across is the 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And each name is repeated in order until the order repeats. The new cycle will start in Tishri. The first cycle starts in Nisan. As God said, that will be the first month to them. So, as you can see, I began the cycle with Nisan, the first month according to God, seeing that Abia is the 8th in the rotation. His beginning of the year service would fall on the 4th week of Iyar, which would be about the 2nd week of May, right here. April and May split in half. The Hebrew months fall in the middle of two of the Gregorian months. So approximately, we would have the last 2 weeks of a month beginning the first 2 weeks of a Hebrew month, and the last 2 weeks of a Hebrew month would be the first 2 weeks of the next Gregorian month. So his would fall the second week of May because it would be the beginning of the month. The end of ER would be roughly the beginning of May. Mid-ER, beginning of May, 2 weeks into May, end of ER, 8th week, 4th week of that month. So, following the same pattern, he would serve the 4th week of Keshvan over here also. And that would be the second week of November. Now, we all know that there are 52 weeks a year. So what about the remaining weeks? That's where I would like to point to the Mishnah for some information. So, Mishnah Yosuka, Perek 5, Mishnah 7, I'm not exactly sure what that all means yet, I'm still growing, says, at 3 times during the year, all 24 priests, 24 priestly watches have equal status, and that all receive a share in the temple service, independent of the standard order of the watches, and all receive a share in the accompanying gifts of the priesthood. As you can see, it's recorded that 3 times during the year, all 24 priests' watches have equal status. That means all priests would be in office at the same time, 3 times a year. Note that the Mishnah goes on to say that this would be independent of the standard order of the watches. This means the priestly rotation would pause during the 3 festival weeks, giving us an additional 3 weeks to add to the 48 weeks of the priestly cycle, totaling 51 weeks. However, I will continue to count 4 weeks to a month for an approximate month and year of Jesus' birth for simplicity of mapping out the year. So, in Luke 1:23 through 25, it says, it came to pass that as soon as the days of his administration were accomplished, he departed to his own house, and after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months, saying, thus hath the Lord dealt with me in the days wherein he looked on me to take away my reproach among men. So this is actually the next building block to dating Jesus' birth. It comes from the birth of John the Baptist. Notice that Luke 1:24 says after those days, and Luke 1:23 says as soon as the days of his administration were accomplished. Contextually speaking, Elizabeth took a child after the days of his administration were accomplished. That means if he was serving the 8th week, in the 9th week, she conceived and hid herself 5 months. So, once again, I prepared another chart for you guys to consider. So, as we know, Abia serves twice a year. So, if he were to serve in the 4th week of ER, Elizabeth would conceive in the 1st week of Sivan, as you can see right here. This ER would cover weeks 5 through 8, cycles 5 through 8. At the end of the 8th cycle, Abia would be released and a next priest would come in. And the 1st week of Sivan or Sivan would be when Elizabeth would become pregnant, which would be the third week of May, approximately. So, likewise, in the second term of service, Abia would serve the last week of Keshvan. That means Elizabeth would become pregnant the first week of Kislev. So again, if he's serving the 8th week, which is the second week of November, the 4th week of Keshvan, after his service, the first week of Kislev, which would be the 3rd week of November, Elizabeth would become pregnant, approximately. So, picking up in Luke 1:26 and 27, it says this: In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto the city of Galilee, named Nazareth, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. Notice that it says in the 6th month. This context immediately follows Elizabeth taking a child after the service of Abia and going into seclusion for 5 months. This is more explicitly stated in Luke 1:36. It says, And behold, your cousin Elizabeth, she has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren. So, you see once again in Luke 1:36, it confirms Elizabeth was pregnant in the 6th month. And that's when the angel visited Mary to tell Mary that she would bring forth a child. So, let us move on to Luke 1:39 through 40 for more details. It says, And Mary arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste into the city of Judah, and entered into the house of Zachariah and saluted Elizabeth. And it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Ghost. According to the flow of the passage, Mary went to visit Elizabeth in the days of her 6th month being pregnant. Then things started getting interesting. Baby John leaps in, and Elizabeth becomes filled with the Holy Spirit. Continuing into verse 42, And she spake with a loud voice and said, Blessed are you among women. This is some interesting context coming up. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And whence is this to me that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For lo, as soon as the voice of your salutation sounded in my ears, the babe leaped in my womb for joy. Notice Luke 1:42 says, the fruit of your womb is blessed. If you look at your interlinear Bible, you'll find out that the Greek word translated as blessed is perfect past tense. This indicates it's an action that has already been completed, which signifies that Mary has already become impregnated in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy. In Luke 1:45 it says, And blessed is she that believed, for there shall be a performance of those things which were told from the Lord. The Greek word translated as performance actually means completion, and it's in a future tense. This can be another indication that Mary has already become pregnant, especially considering the previous statement, blessed is she that believed. Again, We see Mary is blessed, but now it is qualified with a reason. She's believed. Luke 1:48 and 49. For he has regarded the lowly state of his handmaiden. This is Mary singing her song. There's some key clues in her song that will also let us know she's probably pregnant. For he has regarded the lowly estate of his handmaiden. For behold, from henceforth all generations will call me blessed. For he that is mighty has done to me great things, and holy is his name. So Luke 1:48 and 49 also has some past tense language, which indicates Mary's likely already pregnant. From henceforth in Luke 1:48 is a starting point. The question it would be, why now? A reasonable answer would be that God is already fulfilling his word that he would bring forth a holy son. Luke 1:49 is an even stronger inference when she says, he that is mighty has done great things. Done is past tense and means something was done to her. Again, I would infer that something would be that he gave her a son. Now that we know that Mary was very likely pregnant in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, we can actually map out 2 potential birth dates for Jesus. As previously discussed, Abia's first term of priestly service was the 4th week of Iyar, which is about the 2nd week of May. Luke 23 through 24 alludes to Elizabeth becoming pregnant the following week in the 3rd week of May. So I have that mapped out over here. This is the same portion that you saw previously in the video and in the slides. The additional is Mary's pregnancy off to the side right here. The purple shows the time when Elizabeth became pregnant, and the purple here shows the time when Mary became pregnant during Elizabeth's pregnancy. Just so you guys can understand it if you want to pause and look at it for later study. So Mary would have become pregnant in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy. That places the conception in the 3rd week of October. 38 weeks later, July 14th through the 21st would be the expected delivery date for Jesus if Mary became pregnant in the first term of Abia's priestly service. The pattern would be the same if Elizabeth became pregnant during Abia's 2nd term, which would be the 4th week of Keshvan. The following week, Elizabeth would conceive about the 3rd week of November. So Mary would become pregnant in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, which would be about the 3rd week of April. After 38 weeks, Jesus would be delivered approximately January 14th through the 21st. So, in conclusion to everything we've discussed, I present 2 possible birth dates for Jesus. The first being between July 14th through the 21st, and the second being January 14th through the 21st. So which date is correct? Stay tuned for the next part of our series, which will be tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hit the notify button. It's on my YouTube, and it'll tell you the time in your region. Stay tuned for the next part of our series, which is going to bring forth even more details and work out a couple of misunderstandings regarding the dating of Jesus' birth. Now, that is my presentation regarding the course of Abia. I didn't know how long it would be. We kind of just flew through that. It's been roughly a half hour. But I want you guys to know that I've gone through a great deal of studying, and these upcoming presentations are going to be very, very interesting. And you're going to see Luke and Matthew collapse in order, and things are going to make a lot more sense. So, brothers and sisters, stay tuned, and thank you for joining me for this presentation. May God be with you and lead us all into all truth. And I mean that sincerely. Thank you.